Welcome to another episode of our video series of the mechanics of human cognition.
It's great to be here.
It really is. I always find these conversations they pull you right out of the day-to-day noise and get you thinking about the really big questions.
Absolutely. And today we're jumping into one of the biggest, a question that, pop culture has had a lot of fun with, but has been, I think, fundamentally misunderstood on a scientific level.
The big one. Are we living in a simulation?
Exactly.
But we need to be very, very clear right from the start. We're not talking about the usual idea, right? The computational theory, like we're all just code running on some giant hard drive somewhere.
No, that's a fascinating thought experiment, but it's not what we're discussing today. This is about the biological simulation. This isn't a future-facing theory. It's a neurological reality we've understood for at least half a century.
So the argument we're exploring is that we are, right now, living inside an incredibly high-quality simulation. One that's generated entirely by the hardware between our ears.
Precisely. The simulation isn't out there in the cosmos. It's in here.
Okay, so let's start there. With that 50-year-old foundation, what is the core neurological fact that forces us down this road?
It all boils down to the uniformity of sensory data. Think about every single thing you experience. The sight of a sunset, the sound of music, the taste of your coffee, the feeling of a handshake.
All totally different experiences coming from different organs, eyes, ears, skin.
Right, but here's the thing. No matter how different the source is, light, sound waves, chemical reactions, pressure, your sensory nerves convert it all into one and only one type of signal.
Electrical impulses.
Just simple electrical impulses, little firings. So this incredibly rich, complex world gets translated into something like a high-speed Morse code.
That's it?
That's it. Your eye sends these rhythmic pulses, your ear sends identical pulses, your skin sends the same kind. Your brain, which is, just a 3-pound organ floating in darkness, it has never, ever had direct contact with the outside world.
It's completely sealed off. It's just getting this constant storm of identical electrical signals.
Exactly. And so its entire job is interpretation. It receives this stream of data and has to decide, okay, these pulses at this frequency mean the color red and that's beautiful, or these other pulses mean this food is delicious.
So the brain is basically a rendering engine. It's building a 3D model of reality from nothing but frequency data.
It is the ultimate interpreter. Everything we call the external world is a projection. It's a construct, a very convincing one, but a construct nonetheless. It's a simulation.
Okay, if we accept that, the next logical question is, why is it so limited? If our brain is this powerful, why aren't we perceiving everything?
Yeah, and that takes us straight to the evolutionary funnel, our senses. They didn't evolve to give us a true objective picture of the universe, not at all.
They evolved for one reason.
Survival. To find food, avoid predators, reproduce, and pass on the species. That's the entire design spec. Anything that didn't help with those immediate goals was just evolutionary noise. It was filtered out.
Like all the other signals flying around us right now.
Think about it. The room you're in is flooded with the electromagnetic spectrum. Microwaves, radio waves, GSM signals for your phone, Wi-Fi.
We don't have the antenna for any of it.
None. So for our biological simulation, it's as if they don't exist. And even the part we can perceive, visible light, is an absurdly tiny slice of the whole thing.
I remember reading that it's a hair-thin band, just from around 400 to 700 nanometers.
That's it. Our entire visual world, all the colors, the glory, the spectacle of life is constructed by our brain interpreting that one tiny sliver of energy. To call that sliver reality, well, the source material calls it susmalundaniscasa,
Which means
the height of absurdity. It's preposterous.
And it is. Because we take this tiny, filtered, internally generated picture and we treat it as the objective truth, which leads to this huge lag in our understanding.
Massive lag. For most of human history, we saw the universe as a sort of machine, a Newtonian system.
The billiard ball universe, cause and effect. You hit one ball, the other one moves.
Yeah.
Simple, predictable, linear.
It was comforting. It worked perfectly with our survival-based simulation. But then around 1905, everything just shattered.
Quantum physics, relativity, chaos theory.
All of these ideas that were completely non-Newtonian, suddenly you have concepts like things being in two places at once, wave-particle duality, fundamental uncertainty.
And here's the paradox, right? Our modern world runs on that science. Phone in your pocket, digital cameras, GPS, it's all quantum. Even a modern washing machine uses chaos theory for its cycles.
Yes, we use the technology every single day, but our thinking, our decision-making, our social structures, They're still stuck back in that simple mechanical billiard ball logic.
We're trying to apply 17th century logic to a 21st century reality.
We haven't made the mental jump. We're trapped in what the source calls the lowest, most mechanical level of our mind. The Turkish is aklımızın en sufli bölümünde. And because of that, we can't see the malleable, probabilistic nature of the reality we're actually in.
Which makes the philosophical side of this so much more intense. If it's all an internal construct, how could you ever prove it wasn't? This is the old brain in a vat problem.
And the answer is you can't. There is no experiment, no scientific test you could run right now that could prove to you that you aren't just a consciousness suspended in some viscous fluid. The source has a very vivid description. A balgamdan halis kıvamlı bir sıvı.
Like a phlegm-like fluid.
Yes, with signals being fed directly into your nervous system. You can't disprove it. It's impossible.
And that inability to disprove it is the real prison.
The mind becomes the most prosperous prison in the world if you don't understand its nature. And the worst captive is the one who doesn't even know they're a captive.
It's the ultimate test from that film, The Matrix. If you watched it and just went to bed and slept soundly.
Then the core philosophical problem, the sheer horror of not being able to prove your own freedom, it just didn't land. You saw it as science fiction, not a documentary about your own condition.
But let's take this one step further.
Yeah.
Because the biological reality is even more radical than one big shared simulation like in the movie.
Oh, much more. It's more individualized. And frankly, it's a bit more psychopathic in its implications.
How so?
It comes down to our individual brain architecture, the actual physical wiring of your brain, the connections, the synapses. It's as unique as your fingerprint.
So no two brains are wired the same way, ever.
Never. Not in the past, not now, not in the future. So if the hardware is completely unique to you, what does that say about the software that runs on it?
The software, the simulation itself must also be completely unique.
That's the terrifying synthesis. Everyone is living in their own private, bespoke simulation. We're not all plugged into the same server. We're each running a custom operating system that no one else can ever access.
But then, how do we agree on anything? How do we communicate or drive on the same side of the road if my reality is fundamentally different from yours?
Language. Language is the bridge. It creates what the source calls the vemi, the illusion, the false sense of a shared experience. We agree that a certain wavelength of light is called blue, but your internal experience of blue could be completely different from mine.
And you can see proof of that in things that are really subjective, like taste.
Exactly. Take something like cilantro or artichokes. If reality were objective, we'd all either love them or hate them. The chemical compounds are what they are.
But some people think cilantro tastes like soap.
Right. The wild variation proves the difference isn't in the plant. It's in the individual mental representation. It's the software.
So this leads to the final, mind-bending conclusion. If we're each running a unique simulation,
then every single one of us is the soul master, the Tekil Hakimi, the absolute sovereign of our own private universe.
and when you truly grasp that, you're faced with a choice. A really stark choice.
And there is no middle ground. You can't just kind of half believe this.
So choice A is, you ignore it, you go back to living as if the world is external, objective, and happening to you. And in that view, you're basically a victim of circumstance.
That's choice A. And choice B is radical acceptance. You accept that your reality is your own construction, and you make your life, your perception, the single most important project you have.
It's really just a shift in perspective then.
Entirely. If you see the system as an external dictator, then the source is blunt. Welcome to hell. Because you will always be at the mercy of things you can't control.
But if you see it as a developmental space, a playground, the term used was oyunalanya, a play area.
And the boundaries are limitless, because the only boundaries that exist are the ones you've constructed for yourself. Now, of course, the system has consistency. It has 3.5 billion years of R&D. You can't just wish for a car to appear, but the fact that you can use things like breathwork or fasting or meditation to fundamentally change your body chemistry, and therefore your perception, proves that the internal master can absolutely tune the system. The external reality isn't as fixed as we're taught to believe.
So the ultimate takeaway here is about reclaiming that power, understanding that the prison walls are self-generated.
They only exist as long as you believe they're real. The second you realize it's an internal simulation, the boundaries have to start dissolving.
This has been a really crucial examination of how we perceive everything.
I hope it gives people a lot to think about.
It definitely should. So here's a final thought for everyone to take with them. Given that we are the unique masters of our own simulated reality, and language is just the tool that creates the illusion of a shared one, What fundamental beliefs about things like honesty or integrity must we immediately re-examine?
Right. Are you living a life governed by your own unique software, or are you just trying to comply with society's collective linguistic agreement? Where does your definition of truth really come from? From your simulation or from the dictionary? Your answer to that defines your freedom.
Thank you for joining us for this analysis of the mechanics of perception.
Until next time.